What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 18. We're joined today by Barry Winsbury, the founder of Quantum Hydroponics. Barry has won a few awards for gardens grown with this system and has experience with different forms of hydro that led him to this solution. Connect with Barry on LinkedIn and look for a link in the show notes. Enjoy the show. Barry, how's it going, man? Thank you for jumping on the show.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
It's great to pull you on the show and to dig into some of your projects. I don't think we've had anyone on yet with a deep hydroponics experience. And it looks like you've been well into hydro for 2 decades or more. How did you really get started on the hydro front?
Well, when I first got my house back in 1983 was when I started cultivating, which first time was in the back garden, in the ground, and that was worse than watching paint dry. So I thought, right, well, what's the next step? And I read up on hydroponics. So I thought, right, well, off I go. Here we go with hydroponics. And I was watching the UK industry because I saw that companies were having trouble there with their systems, and I read up on root rot and everything like that. And they were looking to try and get rid of the root rot. And I had a sort of ambition to build a commercial hydroponic system. So in 1984, I started hydroponics, started experimenting with different systems. I went through ebb and flow, NFT, DWC. I didn't get into aeroponics because that wasn't really about then so much. But, you know, I looked to build my own system. And then in 1999, that was when I discovered quantum hydro through, you could say, brainstorming with a group of friends. We got rather well smashed, and I had this vision of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which was where the idea of quantum hydro came from.
So taking some notes out of the ancients books there with the Hanging Gardens.
That's correct. I mean, it goes back, they say 3,500 years, but I think it goes back further than that because I'm into the ancient aliens as well. And to me, it's something that they left behind for us to discover. What it's done is it's brought out a new method of hydroponics, which I call nutrient trickling technique.
And before we dig into the nutrient trickling technique there, you mentioned a few different types of hydro that our listeners might not be familiar with. Nutrient film, NFT, and then DWC was the deep water culture.
That's correct.
Could you explain the differences between the nutrient film technique and the deep water culture process?
Well, NFT is like a flat table with sides on it, and you get a flow of water coming in at the top end. The table's tilted. You put a spreader mat, which they generally use like fiberglass matting, a very thin fiberglass matting, and then rockwool blocks on top of that, and a cover sheet on top of that, and it just flows down. But the trouble is when that flows down and the roots grow, the roots crisscross the table and it ends up getting pools of nutrient. And those pools of nutrient, they stagnate and they cause pH fluctuations all over the place. And then moving on to DWC, I found that through the High Times magazine at the time. They put a toilet on the front cover of the magazine, which, you know, deep water culture is in the toilet. And I thought, fine, well, I'll give that a go. But as I was looking for a commercial system, I wanted to eradicate the problems that they was having. And deep water culture got rid of a lot of the problems, but you've got a huge volume of water with with each system.
You just have to deal with that toilet at that point, huh?
Yeah, well, you're using buckets of nutrients, so you're using 15 litres of nutrient in each bucket to keep it bubbling. And then when you come to a nutrient change, if you've got thousands of plants, that's thousands and thousands of litres of water. So
it's not efficient at the end of the day,
right,
huh?
not in the way for commercial hydroponics.
Right. And then ebb and flow was the third one you mentioned. And ebb and flow would be with a tray that is more stable, right? Not like your NFT, and you just fill that tray and allow the plants to drink.
That's right. What you do is you set two different levels of one with a pipe about 4 inches up. So when it fills up, you can keep the flow going and it'll go down the hole and exit. So you've got a flow running around. And then when you let the water out, it all drains down. But then when it drains down, it ends up like a beach. So it sort of dries out. And that's where you get your stagnating and things like that coming into it.
You'd have some more pH fluctuations and issues there.
You got it. Yeah, and root rot and things like that. So I thought, right, well, we can't do that one either. And so I moved on again. I tried sort of Dutch buckets as well, but to me, that's passive hydroponics. All you're doing is you're restricting the plant's growth.
Ah, right. So it actually doesn't give them the freedom to thrive or to become what they could.
Well, this is what they're using nowadays. They're using rockwool blocks and drip emitters. They're using buckets with growth medium in cocoa coir, pebbles, or whatever. But all they're doing is drip feeding the plants, and it's restrictive to the plants. They're not allowed to grow to their full capacity.
The grow that I was working in, we used a drip feed system as well, and kind of a homemade one too. We had to push these 50-gallon drums around full of our nutrient solution, and we had a fish tank pump submerged down in there to feed our drip systems. It was a very rudimentary hydroponic system, but I could see some of the restriction there. We would have some root issues or some certain cultivars that just wouldn't thrive under that regime.
Yeah, I can understand all that because I've seen it, and this is what they're suffering with nowadays. You've got plants with mold in them and all sorts of things going on because the plant's just not that good. Some people get it good, and you've got individuals that use aeroponics and have good yields.
And aeroponics, then, since we're defining everything on the way, aeroponics would be actually aerating some of the nutrient solution and pushing that air through pipes that the roots are down into, right? Putting a fine mist.
Aeroponics, they've got a fine mist inside the container, and the roots hang down, and they get involved in that fine mist when they pick up their nutrients that way.
And that's one that I don't have a lot of experience with. It seems very difficult to set up and run correctly.
Well, what you do is you end up getting trouble with the spray emitters. They end up clogging up, and then you have to flush them out. So
keeping that mist fine.
Yeah, keeping the mist fine. So again, that was another cancellation towards a commercial system.
So you've taken all these kind of known methods and techniques and put them into the funnel, and quantum hydroponics has come out on the end. Could you explain that thought process a little bit, and then give us the rundown on your workflow and maybe how that mirrors the Babylon Hanging Gardens?
Well, when I saw the Hanging Gardens of Babylon in my sort of vision, I see it as a staircase, and when roots grow down the staircase, they're not going to follow the contours. They're going to leave air gaps. So that means that when water flows down there or nutrient flows down there, it's going to trickle over the roots. And when it trickles over the roots, that causes friction. And my first thoughts were, I'm not a scientist, and this has never been scientifically investigated, but I thought it's static. And I thought, well, perhaps there's a static charge inside the system because it's all plastic. And is that causing this great uptake of water because, I mean, they use an incredible amount of water, but then they grow incredibly fast and they grow incredibly strong. Then it took a long while because I've got bipolar disorders, and when I first checked the system, I thought, oh, yeah, pH is fine. Yep, pH is fine. Ended up throwing it out the window. Don't bother about pH. I just followed the EC. So
right.
I live in a hard water area, and so I use the hard water formulation of nutrient, which has got pH buffered acid in it. So a little bit later on, some chap said to me, he said, well, would you do a trial showing the pH as well? So I thought, okay, fine. So I went out and got another pH meter. I don't like pH meters because they're a real pain in the backside because you have to keep calibrating them and everything like that. So I did my pH. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I was getting slight fading on the leaves. My pH was running at 4.36.
It's a little low,
And I
huh?
thought, oh, what am I going to do here? So I sort of thought about it a little bit. I thought, well, I've got to change things. So I ended up putting a soft water nutrient in, which has got it's not pH buffered. So my pH.
But do you think the lack of that buffer, the lack of the added pH buffer, allowed you to get that fine line or manipulate the nutrients a little better?
Well, what happened was the pH when you first added your water and your nutrients, the pH starts off around about 7.2, 7.3. Then after about 48 hours, it starts dropping. And after 72 hours, it's down to 6.35. And it remains there very stable. When you top up, it might go up to 6.5, 6.6. Next day, it's back down to 6.35. I thought, well, that's close enough to the sweet spot for me. I don't need to turn around. I don't like any additives if I can help it. So it's a self-pHing system. I used it out in Zimbabwe, and the same results out there. Starts off at 7.2, 7.3, and after 3 days, it's down to 6.35 and remains stable. So it's the only system out there that actually self-pHs, and you only need an EC meter to keep it running well. And the parameters have increased as well.
Would that only apply to hard water as your source?
No,
that way you have that extra calcium, magnesium that may need to be added in other systems?
Hard water or soft water, it still does the same thing. Because out in Zimbabwe, it's soft water.
Yeah, and then the idea there to add as few additives as possible. I can see a few reasons for that, financially, time consuming, consistency. Any other reasons why you'd want to try to reduce the nutrient count or the additional things you're adding to fine tune that pH?
Sorry, I missed that bit there because the pH just come out fine. It's just I don't need to add any other chemicals or any other nutrients.
Oh, it's just not needed. I see.
So that's it. It just doesn't get adjusted from there.
So, and does the quantum hydro model need a cultivation size of a certain minimum capacity to work then efficiently, or can it be scaled up or down?
It can be scaled to infinity. But what I've got is a 10-foot by 4-foot bed that takes 50 plants. And then you just link the systems up. Obviously, I haven't gone up to commercial scale yet, but to me, 6 systems in a row, 300 plants, each one with its own separate tank. It's going to be close to 70 foot long. So to me, that's big enough for most greenhouses. And you just got a separate pump for each unit. And then if you've got any problems, you're only losing one lot of plants. Not that it does cover any problems, because if you do get a problem, there's a simple answer, and it's 3 words long. Change the nutrients. And it cures the problems.
Right, and then you can go to that specific tank for that tray
Yep.
and assess the problem there on the micro level without ruining a whole row or a room of plants.
Yep. And the other thing, because I run after I developed the quantum hydro, I took it up to LinkedIn and basically got laughed off the platform for my idea of a commercial system. And then when I looked into the commercial scale, and I thought, yeah, I can see why, because there'd be hundreds and hundreds of pumps. So this was when I went back to the drawing board and come up with the 10 foot by 4 foot of 50 plants. And strangely enough, the laughing stopped. And I thought, oh, I'm onto the
So it
right
kind of
thing.
reduced the overhead cost of the system overall, huh? The energy consumption, the material cost.
Oh, it's well, you got no buying in and out and recycling of growth materials. You've got a complete clean root structure ready to use after harvest, which is a bonus product. And nowadays, roots contain 10 known cancer curing compounds. So they're good for health shakes and things like that. So that's going to have a market as well.
I've not had any products with cannabis roots in it, but I know there are some therapeutic uses and like different cannabinoids or compounds in the root. We have to dig into that a little bit more on a future blog post, maybe. I'm not too aware of some of those applications.
Yeah, I mean, they can go into creams and all sorts of things. Excuse me.
So it really helps to keep the plant viable, ready to use, and consistent. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, what I've found as well with the nutrient trickling technique, it's increased the parameters of the EC. I can run the plants from 1.2 EC. It doesn't like going much below that. Oh, it can go up to over 3, 3.2, 3.3. You know the EC truncheon? That was flashing off the scale because I was just running by eye. And I thought, well, it doesn't really matter. I can just turn around and top my nutrients up and add a little bit less. And I was running by eye, and I was getting perfectly good harvests until I come to this trial, and I put my EC truncheon in, and it was flashing over the top. I thought, oh, I'm pretty high on my nutrients.
Run a little hot.
What I found, I've always used seeds to start off with. Seeds can start off at 2.2 on EC. They don't have no problems. Cuttings go for about 16, 18, 2 or 3 days, and then take your nutrient up to 2.0, 2.2, and then it's fine.
But you prefer to start from seed. Is that because of the EC requirements, that's the preference, or are there other characteristics with starting from seed versus clone that you prefer? I know that the taproot part of the seed is good. The different pheno options can be great.
It was just easier for me to turn around and start from seed where I was growing.
I see.
You know?
Right.
Didn't really have the facility to keep cuttings for that long.
It takes an extra room and extra environmental controls, different lights even.
You get a better yields up from seeds, although it does vary up and down on the plants. But what I found from the self-pHing thing is that I don't think it is static. I think what it is, it's called gaseous exchange. It's what we do when we breathe. We breathe gaseous exchange. We breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So I think there's gaseous exchange going on in the water, and it's due to the activity, you could say, of it going on because it's such an active system.
Yeah, that atmosphere above the water is really the exchange pool. And
yes.
It's kind of has some water vapor, has different nutrient content, and that's kind of what's responsible for like fixing lakes and other bodies of water. So using that
Correct.
theory in the smaller pools.
Yep. Yeah, fish like a good amount of gaseous exchange going on to keep the oxygen flowing in the water.
Yes, yeah, or I forgot what kind of lakes they're called when it gets stagnant. For a while, I knew all these different types of lakes from a biology class in college, but unfortunately that knowledge is not very useful, so it's fallen in the wayside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
not
could you
not. Go on,
could
carry
you
on.
explain one of these systems? So for our listeners, imagining the quantum hydro solution, you've got your 50 plants per tray, and this can be scaled up to infinity. But then what does that one tray contain? Or what are the parameters now of that single tray system? You've got a tank and a pump feeding it. Is it a standard 4 by or a standard like 4 or 5 inch lipped tray
No,
set
no, it's
flat, or do
tubes.
you set it at an angle?
It's tubes.
Ah, okay. So you're running in tubes going
Yeah.
down. Okay.
And it's developed a bit further from that, because once I developed the 5 tubes, 10 plants in each tube, I then went on and thought a little bit further, and I've got another unit now, which is called the vegetator, which takes, once I turn around and tool up, it'll be 10 tubes. So we turn around and cover 2 systems with one system. And what that has allowed me to do is turn the greenhouse into a perpetual harvesting. So if you've got, say, 1,000 square meters, that takes approximately 120 systems, which would be 12, sorry,
The back of the envelope
rows of
math.
6. It would be 20 rows of 6 for 120 systems. And then what you'd do, you'd start off 2 rows first week, 2 rows the second, 2 rows the third, all the way through to your last week, and then you'd come back and harvest your first week. In between this, your vegetator's working. So your vegetator, once you've got your plants up to flowering height, you remove the tubes and you take them onto the quantum hydro. And you put them on there, and you can go into flower the same day because there's no root shock.
Right. So it's because it's the same solution or the same EC.
Yeah, it's the same. Everything's the same. So, but it's just the fact that you can transplant 10 plants at a time. So then, when you come to harvest, you cut your plants off. They go away for drying. You take your tubes out. They go away for root reclamation and cleaning. And then your vegetator brings you a new set of tubes in, and you're harvesting. Your harvest turnaround is extremely quick. You know
Which is
yourself.
the name of the game, huh? Kind of maximizing the number of harvests you can get will
Yes,
help to just up your overall volume for the year or for the season.
that's correct. I mean, I would say you can probably do 300 plants, 4 people in about 3 hours.
And that's good timing there too, man. When I started cultivating, I was in Denver and a bulk of my job was transplanting. And it took forever. Mixing the soil manually and then taking every plant and doing it one by one, fixing things up. It was a constant
Yeah,
battle there. So
yeah,
anything to improve that or the labor cost that goes into transplanting could be felt exponentially, right? Because those
that's
transplants are
right.
happening constantly.
Yeah, and you know, the size of the growth medium that I use is a 50 mil net pot. That's all. And the net pot's going to be, once I go into production, the net pot will be going, and it'll be an eco-friendly alternative that will go in with the roots once they get cleaned out, and there won't be no plastics involved
I
and no
see.
other
So
growth
that's
medium.
the kind of the next steps for quantum hydro or for the solution.
Yeah,
And
well, that
so you mentioned working on a grow in Zimbabwe as well. How was that experience, and how did that differ really from your home growing or your previous experience?
oh, that was a little bit of a farce, because the chap that took me out there, he turned around and said he had so many hectares under glass, which he didn't have, and he wasn't licensed for cannabis, THC.
Oh,
So
uh-oh.
it was a little bit terrible. So I ended up wasting about 6 weeks or so before we eventually got going. And because I only had 3 months a visa, that I had to come back home. So we only got halfway through the trial. But what the advantage was I learnt how to grow out in the heat. So I know what to do. And growing under the sun is absolutely fantastic.
Getting that full sun, right?
Oh, wow. It is just, you've never seen plants grow like it. They just grow totally different from being in a pot or rock wall blocks the way they're growing now. I mean,
kind of unhindered beneath the soil, and then just getting all that full spectrum sun above, along with environmental hardships and stresses from that heat.
Yeah,
I think it really helps to create a better profile of cannabinoids, right? More terpenes, more good flavor and aroma.
Well, when you talk about terpenes, when I developed the Quantum Hydro, back in 2003, I entered a show in London, the National Gardening Awards. And that was, well, obviously I couldn't put cannabis on, so I used herbs.
Okay,
but what
great.
I did was I used a mixture of herbs all grown in the same environment. And that was what got the judges. They were amazed at the different terpene profiles of all the different herbs and how strong the terpene profiles were, considering they was all grown in the same environment.
Oh, so that's really one of the winning pieces then, being able to express so much from the same base material, the same stock or nutrient.
Yeah, you could turn around and mix and match your plants in there, and it's not going to turn around and make any difference.
Is the quantum hydro system something that can be made? Would you provide the instructions to have others build that kit, or is it something that you would prefer to source and build a kind of a supply chain around in the long term?
Well, in the long term, once it starts, my first system, which I thought was going to be a commercial system, isn't. What I've done is I've readapted it and turned it into a home growing unit with 6 plants in it, which would be ideal. USA allows 6 plants, doesn't it? So
yep, most states are going to let you have that 6 in flower.
That's right. So anyone disabled, they can have 6 plants on the floor in their cupboard. You can actually run this through without even changing the nutrients if you want to, from start to finish.
Right. Or have you tested any autos in the home grow setup as well? I know the auto flowers don't require as much nutrient, so it could be even easier to maintain for a home grower.
I don't particularly like auto flowers. I did try them on there, but auto flowers do what they want when they want.
Yeah, they definitely got a mind of their own, huh?
Yeah, they sometimes they'll sit there and look like they're doing nothing, and then all of a sudden shoot up, and others will just grow at a normal rate. And there was, when you've got 50 plants altogether, you can't have that sort of thing going on. You need 50 plants growing up evenly altogether.
A consistent canopy and consistent response.
Yeah, I mean they're great for people growing at home because you can turn around and have lots of different plants, but then they turn around and say, well, you leave your lights on 24/7. That's a huge waste of power, to me.
Definitely is, yeah. The auto, I have not tried autos at home yet, but I've got actually a setup in progress to just give it a try with some auto seeds that I got from a conference here in the States. So we'll see how that goes. I think the jury's out on what's preferable. I think it depends maybe on your home grow setup, on really the space you have, the cost and things like that. So with your home grow solution, would you see selling that as a kit, all included?
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be a kit coming out. It's 6 plants in a trough. I have got a single plant system as well, but I'm not going to market that because of the root ball problems. Because you've got a pump inside a single pot, and the roots get down and they do interfere with it. So anyone who's growing at home, unless they're experienced, you've got to turn around and lift the plant out and get to your pump and give your pump a clean out because it's going to get infested with roots. There's nothing you can do to stop that.
Right. So it actually works a little a little bit better with some scale, up to that 6 plant count, then you don't need to worry
That,
about cleaning the pump
that's
as
it.
much.
6 plants in a trough, you don't have to worry about the pump. The roots don't get down to it. But the commercial system is not going to be for sale as such.
That would be more on a contracting or consulting kind of basis to set that up.
Well, what I was looking at was possibly a franchise or lease it. And the reason why I've done that is I don't want to go into large corporations. This is to me, it was for the farmers,
The craft
you know what I mean?
growers, legacy
Craft
cultivators.
growers. Craft growers are having problems with taxes and things like this, and they have problems with the black market. Now, if I keep Quantum Hydro to a lease or a franchise, then the black market's not going to get hold of it. So the guys who are doing craft hydroponics, they'd be able to protect their craft by having the bulk of hydroponics that can give them a lot of money, and they wouldn't have to worry about the the black market being able to provide cheaper, because they wouldn't be able to provide the quality that this unit can give them.
Right. I think that's definitely a solution there for commercial or licensed operators in the quality and in the consistency that one of those operations can put out versus an illicit market that may not be as high quality or may vary highly in that quality.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
that
to
there's a
me,
big problem with illicit market in some states here in the US right now,
yes,
where
yes,
it's almost easier for an operator to profit, unfortunately, on the illicit side because of the tax breakdown and the margins always shrinking on operators. Plus supply chain pressures on getting all of your soil and things needed for cultivation. It makes it hard to justify the cost scaling too high before you're just spending money. You're kind of spinning your wheels and draining your bank account.
yeah. I mean, the other thing is the yields that Quantum Hydro will give. It'll double the output of your facility.
Nothing wrong with that either, right? The higher
No,
yields,
not at all.
the more profit, the more
Well,
innovation and
how I,
creativity too.
yeah, how I see Quantum Hydro is it's quality, quantity, and consistency. And Quantum Hydro is a growing machine for cannabis. And if you look at a worldwide product, McDonald's, Costa Coffee, Starbucks, how did they get worldwide? Through machines. Because
Automation and
you'll be able
consistency.
to grow. Yeah, consistency. Then that's what this industry has been looking for. Quantum Hydro will give you consistency that you'll be able to turn around and grow in Massachusetts, and you'll be able to go down to Texas and you'll be able to get exactly the same product. You'll be able to go over to Vietnam and you'll get exactly the same product. And that's what consistency does. That's what machines do. So people who want to break into a worldwide market, a worldwide brand, Quantum Hydro will be the thing, because what it produces is what I call the brand, what I call Quantum Cannabis.
Hey, awesome,
Um,
man.
yeah,
Catchy
I mean,
there too.
I've yeah, it was quite catchy. Some people thought that as well. I smoked cannabis from the age of 19.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Uh,
about your consumption history and kind of how you came into a love of cannabis cultivation and became an innovator in cannabis tech.
uh, it was seeing the industry struggling, which sort of made me. I've got bipolar disorders, and I can be very single-minded, if you like, and it's single-minded towards cannabis and producing a commercial system
Very
that
focused
makes
on kind of solving that problem after you found it.
yes, yes. And then once I've discovered that I found it, I thought, right, well, I've got to turn around and carry it on. Although I shelved Quantum Hydro in 2007 because I didn't want it getting out to the black market in this country. Cannabis in this country is quite bad. They spray it with PGRs and all sorts.
So in
So
the there's just no no regulations around it, so illicit growers in the UK can do anything they'd like,
You're
and
right.
still sell. Right.
They're poisoning our youth.
Yeah, that's one way to put it for sure. Is like improper flushes, using fungicides, and everything
Yeah.
else is not great to inhale consistently or ever.
No, and that's why I've ended up giving up THC at the moment, and I've been smoking CBD and ordering it in from Italy.
Okay,
And
so really leaning into the CBD and the more therapeutic aspects that are brought there, rather than using potentially dangerous products, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I stopped smoking THC over here, because it's so dodgy, so inconsistent. Sometimes you can get some good stuff, but you still don't know what's been sprayed on it.
Yes, that's kind of why I'm willing. I live in Las Vegas here, where there's definitely an illicit market, unfortunately, but the legal market is still ongoing, and it's highly regulated, with test results being required. COAs being attached to every harvest. Some
Yep.
of that safety of mind and transparency is needed. I think I'm at this point. I don't want to chance my health, I think, on an illicit or gray market product, when
Yeah.
I could have something that shows, the heavy metals. It shows what's included and how the product's been treated.
Yeah, that's the trouble, because the cannabis plant can pick up all sorts. It's a hoover, isn't it? It will suck up whatever's there. If you've got it in soil, it's picking up particles that you don't really want it to pick up. Okay, so if it's in soil, you might get a slightly deeper flavouring, but you're getting the flavour of soil. You're not getting the flavour of the actual cannabis plant. To me, a pure cannabis plant is grown on NPK, and that's it. It doesn't have anything else to it.
It's not actually
And
getting that terroir from the local differences, or from the soil medium differences.
yeah, that's it. You know yourself. Different craft growers have got different flavours for the same strain of plant.
Yeah, in general here in the U.S. and in Canada, I mean, it's kind of a known fact that, okay, if I'm growing Blue Dream here in Las Vegas, it's not going to be exactly like the Blue Dream grown in Florida, or that grown
Yep.
outdoors in Humboldt County in Northern California. There's all those differences. Some growers are leaning into the difference there to use as their differentiator, which I think there's some value there. But the
Yep.
consistency of that quantum cannabis, I think, is what allows you to scale and kind of recreate your brand in other markets, or almost franchise your cultivation model.
That's the intention. That's the full intention of it. Because if I'm going to come into you and say, right, well, you're producing 25,000 kilos a year, I'm going to put you up to 50,000 kilos a year. So what's my part worth to you? If I turn around and said, right, well, I want 15% of your bottom line for that, you're coming out 85% on top.
Kind of pays for
So
itself over time there.
it will do. I don't see it being like a franchise, because franchises, the incoming part, the path you's taking on the franchise has to pay for everything, advertising and things like that. To me, I would like to look at it that I come to you, I fit you out the equipment, and then you start paying me. It's not the case of like you pay me first of all. You pay me when you start producing.
Right. Like, so you would really help to get the system set up, configured,
Oh yes,
and then
yeah,
as that becomes operational or goes online, then start some kind of contract or payment
that's it.
there.
The contract to be drawn up. I mean, obviously, if I get someone first off, they're going to get a better deal than down later on down the line, because I know what's going to happen.
Hey, you guys heard it here first, right? Get in there early while the getting's good.
Yeah, yes, I can see what's going to happen, because I've smoked quantum cannabis since 1999. I smoked cannabis from the Emerald Triangle. I smoked cannabis from Thailand. Basically, cannabis from the world over. And in my eyes, there's nothing to touch what the quantum hydro can produce.
Still churning out that quality.
Yeah,
Excellent, man.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think as I expand my own home grow operations, I'd be interested in trying out a little bit of that quantum technology. We'll have to talk a little here off the show.
Yes, yeah. But there's no doubt about it, we can do something about that.
Get a little trial run, right? Have you been over here to the US or to Canada to see the industries?
No, I've read up on it. Canada's quite a strange do, isn't it, with the different size of cultivations that you can do.
Yes, it's an awkward beast in Canada, but they got the federalization in, which is the good part. And now I think some of the businesses and things are lagging. I implemented some software for Canadian grows for a while, and the biggest one I saw was over 1 million square feet as a greenhouse. So they have
that's big.
Some gargantuan greenhouses that, when they're operational or if everything's working and firing on all cylinders, should create wonderful products. But I think that the Canadian scene is having some issues with quality there. And it's been a few years since I've been up north, so if any Canadian listeners are out there, I'm not hating on your products too hard.
Well, that's it. I mean, everyone thinks it's easy to grow a cannabis plant, which it is. But it's not so easy to get that quality and the consistency, is it?
Yeah, and making a brand, consistency is really the name of the game. Like if like you mentioned Starbucks earlier, if I buy a Starbucks coffee today and I enjoy that and go back to buy another one, but it's a different coffee, I mean, there's only so many chances you're going to take before you find a different brand or just solve that problem elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of improvements to go still on home grow, on commercial grow technology, but it's great to learn about quantum hydro and your initiatives here to solve that problem for the world over. Where can our listeners find out more about you, Barry, and more about quantum hydroponics online?
Well, I'm basically on LinkedIn at the moment. I haven't got a website running, but there will be a website running once I start cultivation, because what I want to do is build a showcase facility to show an example. And once the showcase facility is up and growing, then I'll be producing COAs that people can see, and they'll be able to see the quality of the product.
Kind of use that as a case study to prove the product. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, proof of the pudding. Yeah.
Hey, well, I'm looking forward to see what's coming out of Quantum, and we'll definitely talk shop here off the show. But thank you again for jumping on and giving us the lowdown, man. It's very interesting to learn about.
No problem. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis operations consulting, agile product management, and connoisseurship services. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help.